Poor hubby. Poor hubby.
No.
He knows how to sell right there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So,
She's still got a sense of humor. Right?
And I think in New Hampshire, you're
gonna swing left.
okay. So, joining us now from New York.
Okay, now because you'll need some help. Maybe you can have
Look fantastic.
no, maybe.
So, let's do this.
So let's do this. Welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe Pizzolo, Joe Rossinello. Let us go way into the breach Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. We're going across X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, all over the place. Please, wherever you see the video, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. You know what, Joe? It's good that we started with that. You want to know why? We're going to be less angry tonight at the front line with Joe and Joe. You know what we're going to do here tonight? We're going to get serious, but we're going to laugh. We're definitely going to laugh. And that is the perfect starter. Somebody needs to tell her, don't do that. And I don't know, or maybe she's got, Robbie Mook, okay, that Mook who ran Hillary Clinton's campaign. Everybody said that he was so smart and he's the smartest guy in the room and he's the smartest guy in the country. And in the meantime, she lost to Donald Trump. So, but maybe she's got Robbie Mook in the back and telling her, yeah, keep cackling like that. People love it. Joe, I'm going to throw it over to you. It is one of the most annoying tactics, because that's what it is. It's a tactic, okay? She usually does that to evade a serious question. It's one of the most annoying things in politics I've ever seen in the time that I've ever followed politics in my life. And I don't know why nobody's telling her, come on, don't do that. Don't do that. You're turning people off.
Well, I'll tell you what, she is arguably the most unlikable person who's ever run for president, and that's just not me saying it. This is a test of the propaganda machine. It is not Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. It is Donald Trump versus the propaganda machine of the United States of America, and we're going to just see how strong it is. Because ultimately, I have never in my life seen a person who is not even likable in the slightest bit. They put her in that spot. And frankly, I'll be truthful with you. If it's outside of voter fraud, there is no possible way she could win. And here's the sad part. There is going to be voter fraud. There are 27 states in America, I looked it up today, that allow drop boxes. Those drop boxes, as you can imagine, are in inner cities. 27 states allow drop boxes in the United States of America. Who is talking about that? Why isn't that the subject of all conversation? Because ultimately, no one is going to believe that that woman that we just watched is going to win an election. And there's a very good likelihood that she may.
Well, again, I'm going to go with you on this. That the only way she could possibly win is if they cheat. And I said it. I did a short clip the other day. I put on X and Facebook. They're going to cheat their what's off, okay? Because they know. Joe, listen. They know, even though they won't admit it in public, on The View and in other places, they know that we know what we're on to them, and we've been on to them for decades and decades. Okay, they know that we know she's unelectable. They know that we know they're going to cheat. The question is, first of all, you have to ask yourself how many of those states are blue states, in which case they're going to go for Trump. They're going to go for her anyway. It's the remaining states like Georgia,
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan.
See, that's the thing. And if I've been saying this for months, I mean, and we're going to talk about RFK and how that could change the dynamic. But the fact is that the Republicans have done nothing about election integrity, both at the federal level, as far as the RNC is concerned. As I don't know what they've done. What are you doing? In other words, they're going to count votes. Are they going to kick you out again? Like they did, like they did in 2020. And are you going to stand by and not have a judge on standby? Here, talk to the judge, because we are allowed to stay in there by law. I have heard, Joe, we do this now all the time. We have our finger on the pulse of all the news that's going on. I haven't heard anything substantial about doing anything about what you just talked about.
In fairness, Texas and Georgia has done something. Florida has done something. The rest of the states haven't. 27. You could Google it. Those who I did it today because I wanted to see for myself. Drop boxes. And you know they're going to be right in the middle of the cities. So again, no one is going to believe the outcome, and that's dangerous. That's simply dangerous. And Clarence Thomas wrote about it when the Supreme Court did not take the case to review Pennsylvania changing the law to basically accommodate an advantage for Joe Biden. And then they said there was no fraud. Okay, technically there was no fraud. You changed the law. You made it legal. Right. You made the fraud legal.
Right.
You're basically sowing doubt into the system. And that is basically problems.
Well, here, wait, real quick. We're going to play a clip in a little bit of RFK and what he had to say about this. Okay. And it's good because we're going to get into this because I really, Joe, I've not been optimistic about this election. Okay. I wouldn't care if Bernie Sanders was running. I know they're going to cheat. So I know that Bernie Sanders would probably become president, all other things being equal, because Republicans, as I said, don't do anything about it. But if RFK gets in, that might be a game changer. But let's continue with Democrats for a second, because let's get serious on them now. Because Kamala, remember something, Joe, which you remember when she was a senator and she used to talk like this to all the Trump people in the administration. Are you going to commit to me? She was one of those typical stern-faced broads in the Senate, thinks she's going to beat up on all these white guys, probably in her mind. I'm not saying that, okay? Now, all of a sudden, she's cackling all over the place, okay? But here's the thing. Here's what they can't cackle about. Now that video could go on and on. Now here's my question to you, Mr. Rossinello, here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Was that
outside the DNC convention?
No, what I'm saying, was that the DNC in 1968?
No,
or was that the DNC in 2024?
That's this week. And the interesting
No, you know what I mean, because you remember the same thing happened in 1968.
The interesting thing about that is they're leftists. They're not Republicans.
No.
And here's another thing. Why are people allowed in America to protest with masks? You do know that there are states that is not allowed because of the Ku Klux Klan. You cannot protest. They have masking laws in certain states. Obviously, that's not a law in Illinois. Maybe it is, and it's just not being enforced. If you cannot protest with a mask on, sorry, it should be against the law, and it is against the law in some states.
Right.
This is nothing short of crazy. And why it's tolerated, I can't give you an answer. I don't know how that is tolerated. This is the United States of America. Send in the National Guard and arrest them all. You do not get to break things, hurt people, threaten people, burn the American flag. You're going to jail. That did not happen at the Republican convention. Just to compare the two.
No, listen, the violence has always historically occurred at the Democrat National Convention. Where's the violence been in front of the RNC? I didn't see any. And here's another thing too. This is my bone with Trump. He should have sent in the National Guard when they were burning down cities.
Oh, there's no question about that. But also, look at this convention. It's simply, and listen, it's not even political anymore. It's a fabrication of reality. It is utterly and absolutely the culture of death personified. They're basically, it's like a fair. They're giving out abortions outside the convention, vasectomies. It's anti-family. It's anti-child. It's anti-teenager. Then
Joe, it's anti-reality.
No, and bingo. And then you have that going on. And people like Joe, I kid you not. I cannot believe my eyes. What's going on? I can't even believe my eyes. I can't even watch it. If
there was a Kamala equivalent in the Republican Party, I don't know that I'd vote. Well, we do have equivalents of Kamala that I would never vote for. Like I'll stay home. Okay. I wouldn't vote. Like I told you, if I have a fundamental disagreement with a Republican candidate, Nikki Haley comes to mind. Mike Pence comes to mind. Other people in the Republican Party. I'm not going to vote for you. But these people, see, I'm practical. You're practical. And conservatives in general are practical people. We want practical solutions to things. We are grounded in reality, to bring up the word reality again. Okay. Joe, the Democrat Party is pure ideology. Again, we're going to talk about RFK in a couple
minutes.
Here's
another interesting
thing. Ideology.
I've listened to a number of people breaking down the convention. They didn't mention any policy. It's themes, democracy, freedom. No policies are noted. None. Except
what are they going to run on?
They know that. Here's another thing. Are people seeing that?
No. They don't want to, Joe. That's my point.
And Kamala Harris refuses to give interviews. She refuses to give interviews.
Real quick, along those lines, two things have happened. I read a good, again, that's why we scour social media and everything else. Frontline with Joe and Joe. What was your point you just said?
No, no policies, no interviews.
She has not won. She did not win one primary. And she has not given an interview in 32 days. She hasn't done anything in 32 days. And this is the person, Joe, that legit's got a shot to become president because of cheating.
And no, but this is where, again, I just take a step back and I'm just like, how doesn't everyone in America have a problem with that? Everyone. Do you know the power that's involved in being the president of the United States? It's insane. Right. And yet she will not tell you a policy. That is as crazy as when you hear that, like, the Senate and the Congress sign a bill and they didn't read it. Like, would you do that? Would you buy a car? If I was like, we're going to buy a car, just sign it, Joe. And how much does it cost? Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, we'll send you a bill in the mail. Don't worry.
That is, no one would do that. Yet this is my point. There are people straight-faced. It's all about emotion. It's all about, I hate Donald Trump. It's all about these themes, overarching themes, freedom, democracy, no interviews, no policies. And this is who you want to be the president of the United States.
And then they tell us, then they try to convince us, well, she's so smart. Well, then let her stand up in front of a press corps if she's so smart, if she's so intelligent, if she's so on the ball, if she's not just cackling all the time, okay? If she really got something to say and really good policies for America, then the press should be demanding a full-blown press conference with Fox News, with social media, with Joe Rogan there, with Tucker Carlson there. They could have all their lefties in there too. No problem. But you're calling on everybody in the room. Representative of the American people, including the deplorables like you, me, and Tucker Carlson and the rest of those people out there. Okay? Is she so smart? But then the Joe Scarboroughs of the world and his wench wife, Mika Brzezinski, they try to convince us that we don't know what we're talking about. Oh, you're just talking conspiracy theory. She won't answer a question about policies that affect my life, and I have my wife in there, and I have my son in the next room. You have 5 kids and a wife. I want to know what your policies are. See, the difference is, Joe, we know what her policies are.
Well, to be honest with you, people don't care. And that's why I said this is not a Republican-Democrat election. It's not a Trump-Kamala Harris election. It's we the people against the propaganda machine. That's what it is. It's a propaganda machine, the power of propaganda. And we're going to see just how powerful it is. That's exactly what this is, because there is no meat to this. Nothing substantial was said. Nothing.
Right.
And she refuses to show her hand, yet tens of millions of Americans are going to vote for this woman. Right. Joe, it's like I can't wrap my arms around it. Right. I really can't.
No, Joe, listen. I'm not going by the lunatic left, okay? And a lot of people remember, Joe, the left is good. The Democratic Party is good at putting up a unified front. There's a lot of people that disagree with a lot of this nonsense. But again, it's like you said, they want power, so they're going to go along with it. I remember there was a video, or there was a call back in 2022 when in that congressional race, I forgot, it's one of the liberals from Virginia. She's on the call, Joe, cursing her head off, saying, "Don't you effing mention defund the police. I don't want to hear anything about transgenders in schools, queer, the queer story hours. I don't want to hear any of that," because she's in a purple district. Do you know what I mean? So she obviously, whether she agrees with it or not, she's trying to tell, but they do a good job outwardly, and they have a willing press. Let's face that.
Well, they know that. They know that, and
so, that's why they get away with 99.9% of the crap that they do.
Some people are starting to see that. More eyes, but more eyes have to be open to it. Like Joe.
Well, you got it. Listen, Joe, if you value whether you are a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, if you value the system that this country has, which is obviously not working right now because you have a good portion of the American people who literally are just off the rails. I'm sorry. If they think that you and I being anti-abortion, like abortion abolitionists, is off the rails, you want to cut the breasts off of 15-year-old girls. Do me a favor. There's quite not really a comparison there. But let's talk about the press. Let's talk about how they spin things, and let's talk about how you have to go back at them when, of course, you have the opportunity. You have to go back at them, push back, and hit them with the facts.
Good as they were, is that she's in the White House right now. Democrats have controlled the White House for 12 of the last 16 years. And for all of the talk about division and the problems in the country and people are hurting, Democrats have mostly controlled this country. Trump had it for 4. The Obamas and Biden had it for the rest of the time. And somehow, it's still all Trump's fault, and somehow she hasn't been at the center of it. So to me, that's still the glaring hole in this campaign that hasn't yet been solved at the convention. How do you explain all of the problems that will be solved by the person who is currently in there for the last 3.5 years, who is supposed to already be working on solving it?
I mean, that was a boatload of common sense to me.
I mean, do people hear that?
Well, you know, everybody on that panel, of course.
Well, they understand that, but they don't care because they're all rich. I'm talking about regular people who can't buy.
Well, that was CNN, Joe. So
no, but I'm talking about the people. Van Jones makes 7 digits. How about the people who are still going to vote for them?
Well, I mean, like that's CNN, so their audience obviously leans left or independent left. I agree with you. That's a question I would ask myself too. That gentleman just laid out facts. Okay. Obama had the White House for 8 years. Okay. Because Mitt Romney's a moron. Okay. He just is, and had an imminently beatable Barack Obama, and Mitt Romney just blew it. Let's just put it like that. Trump obviously had it for 4 years. And Trump got here's the amazing part. Obama was able to really do a lot of what he wanted to. Okay. And Joe Biden, you know what I mean? He could do a lot too. Trump did so much more than the two of them. All right. And he never, ever was out of the crosshairs. Ever. They hit him with everything. And he was still able to get more done. Joe, I was making more money under Trump. I certainly was paying less in gas. Groceries cost a lot less. Inflation was under control. The market was still doing very, very well. Okay. They hit him with everything they had. All right. And we got judges. They hit him with everything. And he still crushed both Obama and Biden. But the fact is, and he made a very good point, that gentleman. Okay. Joe, this speaks to what you just said about she won't even make a statement about policy. Joe, she's in the White House right now.
But that's what they're packaging. They basically say we're introducing her. No, you're not. She's part of this mess. I saw an interview on X where Don Lemon is on the boardwalk of Atlantic City asking people about the economy, and he's telling people are saying like, I'm losing money. No, you're not. What are you talking about, Don? You made a ton of money on CNN. These are regular people. Don't tell me. But here's the problem. People will still slit their own throat because it's tribal, if it's orthodoxy, and it's religion to them. And it's a sickness. Joe, it's a sickness. I'm telling you right now, I have never in my entire... People talk about slavery. People talk about freedom. These are the least free people I have ever seen in my entire life. They actually, I'm not talking about the single New York guy that's a professional that's going to vote for Kamala Harris who makes a lot of money, or the single New York gal who goes out to dinner 3 times a week. I'm talking about families. Like families that can't pay bills. Do you know that the credit card debt is higher than it's ever been? I heard the number. $1 trillion. Google
believe it.
It's in the trillions. That's people paying because they can't make their monthly bills. These are people who are going to vote for a person that won't even tell them their policy.
Right.
Joe, it's not adult. It's not rational. It's not common sense. And what it is, it's insanity. And I'm watching it full stop, and I can't even believe it.
Well, here, right along those lines.
Her running mate, Tim Walz, and particularly on the issue of immigration. Obviously, some of his policies in his state have come into focus. He signed into law initiatives allowing undocumented immigrants to apply for driver's licenses, free tuition at public universities, and enroll in the state's free health care program for low-income residents. Would you like to see the Harris administration adopt those same policies, Governor?
Well, I can tell you, Tim Walz is a pragmatic guy. He's a Midwesterner just like me. And I think some of the wonderful things he's done in Minnesota resonate with, Americans in all states.
Is she smoking crack? Or is there something in the water in Michigan and Minnesota? No, Tim Walz is not. The one state that went for Walter Mondale, by the way, was Minnesota. So there's obviously something going on with Minnesota, even though Minnesota is capable of crossing over. But having said that, okay, because we don't want to insult anybody here at the front line with Joe and Joe if you're from Minnesota. But here's the thing. Is that his policies? He's a practical guy. The guy is an ideologue. He's everything that we're talking about right now. He comes on the stage. He's going like this. I was like, I thought there was a comparison to Richard Simmons. It was hysterical. This guy Tim Walz. And on top of everything else, here's the thing too, Joe. Here's why I say to you: if the revolution comes, the media is the first to go. Okay. They're letting him lie about his military service, lie. They let Christian Welker just let Gretchen Whitmer lie that this guy is... She didn't push back at all and say, well, wait a minute. The American people are not for 15-year-old girls being forced to get or allowed to get their breasts cut off. They're not for that. The American people, generally speaking, who are pro-abortion, are not in favor of late-term abortion. But Tim Walz is, and you could go on and on and on. The fact that they burned down Minneapolis on his watch, okay, that doesn't resonate with the American people. But this is the thing about the media. They don't push back. And again, not that we have any hope that they will. But what I just showed you, Joe, is an example of what you said. Gretchen Whitmer is not adult. Neither is Tim Walz. Not commonsensical, as you mentioned. Okay, none of those things. None of those. They are pure.
But Joe, people vote for these people. You see, this is the thing. Again, they're not Democrats. These are not Democrats. They're sociopaths. They're sociopaths. And they're hurting you. And yet, like I said, I can't understand it. Because people live in an alternate universe. It's not rational. What she said happened. He's enabling people who don't pay taxes to determine your life based upon law and policy, and you pay taxes.
Right.
You're okay with that? How you work hard. We all work hard. You're okay with that? Forget about the culture for a second. How about this? You can't afford basics. That's why the credit card debt is so high. People can't make their monthly bills. And you're paying between 15% and 29% interest on that, which makes you a slave.
Right.
Which makes you a slave.
Well, stay there right there. Just to expand on it a little further, I wish people would realize compound interest, credit card debt. Even one could argue a mortgage, which, God willing, more people pay their mortgage off and don't do it over 30 years. That's all slavery. So remember one thing about the American dream, and this is going on for a long time. The American dream has been sold. And I wish, like you say, I wish more people would realize this. The American dream is debt. Those who control the money supply, those who control the banks, want to convince you that to fulfill the American dream, you need to go in debt. How do they do that? You're 17. Well, you got to have a car. You got to get a car, don't you? All right. Well, you go out and get a car. You got to finance that, right? What's that? Compound interest. Well, you got to get a college education. No. You won't make it in the world if you don't get a college education. We already seen what that's done to people in terms of student loan debt. You got to have a house. Don't rent. You got to have a house, okay? And you got to work hard, and you got to put a down payment on a house. Joe, that's slavery for 30 years.
Joe, but here's the thing.
All
And
debt
I'll
is
tell you
point.
why. People believe that because they don't know who they are. People buy the lie because they're not grounded in anything. When you're grounded in God, you don't buy the lie. If you have $10 for lunch, you spend $8. That's the truth, because people don't feel like they're worth anything because they measure themselves according to the standards of the world. And that's the underlying reason why all that took place. The lies are there. It's you who write the check. And people feel that they're not someone unless they have these things, and they permit you to have them, and you become a slave as a result of them. And it comes down to, we don't know who we are. And that's why America is in the situation. That's why you'll never be more free if you follow the Lord's law and the natural law. You'll never be more free.
Right.
I have never carried credit card debt in 54 years of my life. And my father was a barber and my mother was a secretary. I've worked my entire life. I have never had credit card debt because I live within my means. If I have $5 for lunch, I get a slice of pizza and a Coke. I don't have a steak. And
I know, I hear you.
Raised, that's how my mother and father lived. They didn't buy things they couldn't afford. And that's a choice because we don't know who we are.
Well,
and
along those same lines,
lie, Joe. And that's why going away from God, people don't prioritize that. It's the most important thing you can impart to your children, and it's the most important thing you could ground your life in. It guides all your decisions. And how many things and pitfalls have I avoided in this life because of that? And yet I'm strange. I'm strange.
Oh yeah, you're a weirdo.
No, but this is
Like,
my point.
to-
And just
no,
like
according
Tim,
to them.
JD Vance is a weirdo.
Right.
You know, and I'm telling you, that is where America has gone wrong. And all our problems stem from that.
Joe, remember
all of them.
Remember in Brave New World, I think it was called Soma. That was what the people consumed to basically numb their pain, to stupefy them, as Peter Hitchens would say, to stupefy yourself. You know, that's exactly what it is. Joe, do you think anybody is going to worry about the amount of credit card debt that they're running up if their only concerns in life are getting laid and getting high? I'm being serious. I'm not even joking a little
Joe,
bit.
then
If
you're
you're
not an
only concerned
adult.
when you wake up in the what's that?
You're not an adult.
But Joe, the point is that, okay, I agree with you. You're not acting like an adult, but then this is why the media hates guys like us, because there are people out there when they find themselves enslaved in this way. And I've brought this up on the show before here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. I've known a couple of younger guys that I worked with. They know I'm Catholic. They know that I'm conservative. Okay. They also know that I didn't live a great lifestyle in my life because, you know, when I become friends with somebody, I'm a bit of an open book. And they came to me like a couple times and said, you know, I'm really caught up in all this pornography and everything else. I said, dude, you know, I get it. You're a young kid. You're 21 years old. They sold you this stuff. Now, thank God, a couple of these guys are like realizing at 21 years old. You're describing people, Joe Rossinello. They're in their 30s, maybe even in their 40s, and they're still buying that lie. And what they don't realize is what you said. If you live according to the natural law, let's just call it the natural law that God wrote in your heart. If you want to call it the 10 Commandments, if you want to call it the Golden Rule, if you follow those rules, you will be free. If you decide to break them and instead of using your reason, you use a different organ below your waist, okay, and you follow that, you're in trouble and you're going to be a slave. That's the bottom line.
Well,
that's
it's
the bottom line.
Like I said, and that's why, to be honest with you, like our issues aren't political because there's it's like a virus. It's got to run its course. And frankly, we're still in free fall. America's still in free fall. We haven't hit the bottom yet. We're going to hit the bottom. Because eventually, Joe, and I'm going to tell you when that happens, it's not going to be, we are going to be in such a bad way.
Ain't going to be pretty. Here's another thing that's not too pretty. Listen to this. Watch this. And watch how ideology, you bring it up all the time. Watch how someone's ideology it prevents them from being authentic. You'll know what I mean when you watch this here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe.
On The View with Barbara Walters back when they liked him.
I can't remember what you're referring to.
You should see it because it's bonkers.
Please welcome my friend, Donald Trump.
My friend.
My friend. Watch this. Just watch this. This is nuts. We're in an alternative universe. Okay? Because this is not that long ago.
Go standing O.
Bro, watch this. Just watch how this goes. Watch this. So she's a Republican. That's easy.
Yep.
But everybody else.
Look at Joy. Can't wait to get a hug in.
Yeah, everyone's hugging. Look at this. Look at this. Kisses, hugs, kisses to Whoopi. Everybody hugs and kisses. Even Joy Behar hugs and kisses.
Even Joy Behar hugs and kisses.
People want somebody now that's going to protect them and protect this country because we're not going to be a great country for long if we keep going the way we're going right now.
So that's all I want to play of that. But here's the point. What changed? What changed with everybody on that stage? Not just him becoming president, okay? And not even just him becoming president as a Republican. What did he do so bad, okay, to those women on that show? And they speak with such, all the wonderful, loving Joe Rossinello, tolerant people, the Joy Behars, they're all tolerant. They are vicious, Joe. Vicious with the way they speak. Not just about him. They've spoken about his family, okay? Really, really disgraziad stuff, okay? That's disgraceful for all you non-Italians out there. Disgraziad. What did he do different? Why did they change their tune so much, Joe?
Well, personally, I don't think he did anything to them, personally. Donald Trump threatens the establishment. Tariffs threaten the establishment. Donald Trump threatens the military complex, industrial complex. That affects powerful people. And frankly, that's how they get paid. They get paid. The View gets paid because of commercials. That's why they make the money that they make.
Right.
And they do whatever they're told because of it. It shows you just frankly how on the drop of a dime, those people, and to the Rogan's point, that was not too long ago, 2015, 9 years ago. They're
Right.
hugging him. Now they hate him.
Right.
Because he's not on board with their agenda. And here's another thing. He's one of them. Donald Trump's a billionaire. He's one of them. And he turned on them because frankly, Donald Trump is far from perfect. But ultimately, and you could listen, even Chris Cuomo said it at the convention, the DNC convention this week.
What did he say?
He basically said, do you see those boxes up there? Those are the people looking down at you. Those boxes cost $750,000, $1.5 million. That's who controls the country.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump is bucking them. And frankly, that's why the Republicans don't do anything either, because those are the same people that give them money too.
I know.
And there is the problem. Chris Cuomo just said this. Look it up on X. Chris Cuomo, who's on CNN.
I guess they don't like. I mean, it's obvious they don't like.
They don't like us. You see, and it's not us.
Joe, they don't. Wait a second. Let's clarify something. I agree with you. We know that they hate us. We're deplorable.
No, but that's what people. It's regular people.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's where I'm going. I want your comments on this. But here's the thing: Kamala Harris. No one in the Democrat Party or any independent has had an opportunity to vote for her in a primary.
People.
So my point, real quick, Joe. Joe, real quick. I want to comment on this. Here's my point. They hate their own kind.
But Joe, people refuse to acknowledge that reality. How could you possibly not see that? And how can't that bother you? You see, this is the twisted part that I bang my head against the wall. Like I just say, how can't that bother you? Joe, and this is why I'll be honest with you. The answers are so deeper than what we're seeing on the surface. That whole convention is a fantasy. It's a fantasy. And because people don't live in reality, they live in a self-rationalization. They're trying to create something that can exist, doesn't exist, and never will exist. Never will. And the sad part is, here's another point, which I heard today from a talking head, and they're 100% right. This is the last election that the African-American population in America will have any voting power ever, because they have been replaced. They have been replaced by 10 million people south of the border, and they're the first ones that are going to be betrayed.
I want to say, you know what? I want that. I don't like. I used to think that from what I've seen of him, that the guy who calls himself Charlemagne the God, now he's on Candace Owens and conservatives, all right, but he's all in. He's all in, all right. I want to go on his show. I want to tell him, hey, Charlemagne, let's get it straight. You were useful from the 60s up until about 5 minutes ago, and you're not useful to them anymore. And Trump was right. This is another reason why they hate him, Joe. Now, I had arguments with people who think that Trump is stupid. I was like, dude, he ain't stupid. When he looked at the African Americans and he said, what do you have to lose? He was exactly right.
Well, Joe, I got news for you. That's going to be the first. You're starting to see it. I've seen interviews in the South Side of Chicago. Who you voting for? Donald Trump. These are black people in the South Side of Chicago. People in the Bronx. People in New York City. Black people. Know why? Because they're seeing that the resources in their neighborhoods that used to go to them are now going to people who don't pay taxes. Who, by the way, we're paying for them to vote.
Right.
That's why they're getting stuff. We're not giving them stuff, or at least the machine isn't giving them stuff because they like them. They're giving them stuff so they could vote. That's what it's about. It's bribery. You're buying their vote. You're buying their influence, but they're the new voting bloc that's going to keep them viable in the inner city. And we're starting to see it, but we're really going to see it in the next 4 years if Kamala Harris wins. They're the first group to get betrayed. And frankly, far too many of them still drink the Kool-Aid and think that this woman is going to represent them. Wrong. Your goodies are going elsewhere.
Right.
And it's happening if you're paying attention to the inner city voices in the Bronx, in Chicago, you'll hear it. That voice is going to get much louder.
Trump did a rally in the Bronx. He did a rally in the Bronx. The guy's not stupid. He gets it. I'll tell you, let's pivot for a second. If you're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, please share this video. Share it wherever you can. We're all across X, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, a bunch of other sites, wherever you're seeing us. Help us out. If you like our conversations and the clips we play and the fun we have here, then we'd like to grow our audience just like any other podcasters out there. Now, here's the thing. The Democrats push, and there's some people that push back.
There's two options that we're looking at, and one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Waltz presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump, and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision.
Now, what you heard there,
that's RFK's VP, just so
Nicole Shanahan. Okay, Nicole Shanahan. What you heard there was honesty. Now, she's a Democrat. I'm sure I don't agree with her on much. Okay. But what I heard there was what was a non-ideological statement is really what I heard. Is like, really the way I heard her was the Democrats are screwing over RFK. They're screwing over our ticket. They're not really inviting us to the party. So we're going to have to make a decision. All right. And before you comment, Joe, I do want to play RFK. Okay. But I wanted to lay the groundwork for everybody watching at the front line with Joe and Joe. All right. There's at least honesty and a level of authenticity coming out of RFK's, what do you call it, regime, or his group there, all right, his campaign. They're at least being honest. Now, let's watch this real quick, and then I want your comments.
Hey, everybody. I'm at the state courthouse in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. This morning, I'm supposed to be in a meeting with community leaders on the south side of Chicago today, talking about criminal justice reform. But I had to come here because the Democratic Party is suing me in Pennsylvania. And by the way, tomorrow I'm going to Mineola, Long Island, because they're suing me there too. They're suing me all over the country. They're trying to keep me off the ballot. Unfortunately, in some of these states, we're running into judges who are highly politicized and who are very, very sympathetic, let me put it that way, to the DNC. And today, the judge was less than sympathetic to our side. I came down from Boston this morning. I was supposed to get here last night. We had the whole day set aside for my testimony and for the testimony of Nick Brenna, who is our ballot access director, who stayed the night here in Harrisburg. But I was supposed to come last night, but my plane got canceled because of weather. So I got up at 4 o'clock this morning, and I made it here by 11:30. But the judge said that because I was late, that I was not going to get a chance to testify. So my testimony, which was critical to this case, was excluded, and she wouldn't even let Nick Brenna testify, even though.
So, Joe Rossinello, let's leave that there, okay? Do you see what they did to this guy? Like he even said, he goes, well, you got these judges that are sympathetic. It's forget about what they did to Trump. Like you expect them to do that to Trump. RFK Joe is one of their own. He's one of their own. His own family, disgraziad that they are, they turned on him because he doesn't agree with them on every single thing. And the fact that the DNCC did this, here's my point. If he endorses Kamala Harris, which I know you said is impossible.
No way.
I'm gonna agree with you. But if he endorses her, whatever level of respect I had for him is out the window, and I never want to hear his name again in politics.
No, that's not going to happen. It's a good play because ultimately, I saw a poll. He had 4% of the vote. He's not going to win. They're not allowing him on the ballots. He can't win. So you roll the dice. You go with Trump. You basically can get a big job in his administration, potentially the attorney general, potentially the head of the CIA, to name two things. Maybe it's something even bigger. Maybe he says, I want to be Secretary of State. You get a big job and you're still active. Your name's out there and you run again. It's a good play. And that's the play. To be honest with you, it's the smart move, and he's not a dummy. And ultimately, both of them are outsiders. They're anti-establishment. This election is not Republican versus Democrat. It's the establishment versus the dissent.
Right.
It's the establishment versus the outsider. That's the election. And he is an outsider. They don't agree on everything, but you know something? That's what politics is. You're never going to agree on everything. It's about coalitions. It's about forming pacts and making agreements. And that's what that is. It's the smart play, and it's going to be announced tomorrow in Arizona. I'm
in Arizona. I'm in Arizona. RFK's in Phoenix. Trump is in Glendale. I guess that's probably not a coincidence, Joe.
But what is another point there where people should say, how could you say that this is a government of the people when a man that's worth millions and millions of dollars can't get his name on the ballot to run for president? How can you look people in the face and say this is a country that represents you? Because it doesn't.
Right.
And this is, again, Joe, it's simple. You don't have to be a brain surgeon. Just start connecting a few dots and asking yourself some questions, simple questions. Does this government represent your interests? The answer is frankly no, and that should trouble you because you're not worth millions of dollars, which means you are vulnerable, which means your children are vulnerable. Don't you want to get it? It comes down to that. You don't have to went to Harvard to figure it out. It's right in front of your face.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned now again. Let me say it like this. You mentioned that people will vote and it's not in their interest, but you're assuming what their interests are. Now, I would agree with you. You would think on a commonsensical level, if you're paying over $6 for a gallon of milk, okay, or you're paying over $5 a gallon of gas, you would think, well, it's in your interest to want to vote somebody in who's going to do something about that. But Joe, again, we got to remember something. We're talking about people who don't necessarily use their reason. You mentioned credit card debt. It's okay. I'll put on the credit card debt, but I want my drugs. I want my abortion. I want this. We're gonna bring it. We're gonna go to UK after this, and then we're gonna bring it back to Canada to talk about drugs and free drugs. And Dougie Ford did a hell of a little press conference. We're gonna talk about that. But Joe, you're assuming that those people have an interest in eating at a relatively low price.
But Joe, money affects everything. I'll use an example. If you talk abortion versus immigration, that doesn't hit home for a lot of people because most people aren't watching the news religiously. Most people are not up on issues. It's what Clinton said. It's the economy because everyone has to eat. Everyone has to pay their bills. This is basic stuff. This is basic stuff that affects all people. And when you look at the price of gas, when you look at your grocery bills, if you think, and that goes to that CNN interview, Trump was only in office for 4 years. For the last 12 of the last 16 years, the Democrats were in office. They own it. You can't connect that dot? Like, and you don't want to connect that dot?
Right.
You think that if you're struggling financially right now, somehow it's going to get better? It's the same ideology that's going to continue. This is simply about staring reality in the face. And here's the thing. If you're a single professional person living in a city, you can weather it. But most people, regular people in regular towns, working regular jobs, can't. And all those little asides, frankly, isn't going to pay your bills.
Well, I agree.
Kids aren't going to have new shoes for school.
But Joe, but here's the thing. But then why would someone, if it's so, and I agree with you. I want you to understand that Trump, the economic conditions under Trump and the economic conditions under Joe Biden, it's demonstrable how much better.
And I'm going to tell you why, because it's tribal, Joe. It's just like someone will not deny their religion. They look the other way. It's their identity. My identity is my political affiliation. And to deny their identity means they have to change, and they refuse to do so. Well, that's why. You see, I'm going to be honest with you. My identity is I'm a Catholic. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a conservative either, Joe. I am not beholden to anything. Mm-hmm. No one, no party, nothing. I'm beholden to the church, to the teachings of the church. I am a citizen of heaven before I'm even a citizen of America. And that's why I see this and I say to myself, what are you doing to yourself?
Right.
Not to me, to yourself.
Joe,
because it's a part of their religion. Their political affiliation is their identity. That's why. That's the answer.
Okay, well, okay, but when the hammer comes down, and I want to play a clip for you. When the hammer comes down, okay, because maybe you now all of a sudden start to rethink your ideology. Maybe you start to disagree with it, and maybe you do a podcast, or maybe you do something that gets it out there in the public. America's not that far away from the UK, Joe.
The country of the Magna Carta, arguably the first ever document in European history that stated that the government, the king, was not above the law, is now sentencing people to jail for disagreeing with them online or for attending a protest and saying, we have had enough of your open border policies. We have had enough of mass immigration, of its detrimental consequences, and we want change. Because just like I have, you've probably been seeing all of the reports of the countless people who are now at an extremely fast rate, like we're talking matter of weeks, are being tried and sentenced and sent to jail for months and years for essentially doing very little or either nothing, but to disagree with the government.
Now, all of everything she just said is true.
100%.
And now here's the thing. She made a good point, by the way, about the Magna Carta. If anybody from England ever thinks that England is any better than any other country, they're worse. We're on the same path. So don't get me wrong. They let in all these immigrants, okay? And by the way, Hungary doesn't have these problems in a few other places in Europe because they shut it down. But they let in all these immigrants. And the establishment in England is saying that if you, like, Joe, there's been, I don't want to get graphic, there's been gang rapes, like random gang rapes in England and London and everything else. The same thing's happening in France. In other words, if you call the rapists rapists, and they happen to be from another country and they're not citizens, we played a clip last week or the week before. The judge sentenced the guy to 20 months.
Well, let's
20 months in prison.
Let's look at why. Because ultimately what this is about is control. And the problem is that the press used to control the messaging. So now what do you have? You have the internet. And basically what's happening, it's like what happened in the Arab Spring. For years, for decades, people in countries like Libya, people in countries like Syria lived like they were in the 13th century. And now all of a sudden the internet comes around and they say, wow, why are we living like this when they are not? Well, here you have the internet, and that's why they're trying to control the messaging. That's why they're shutting down voices. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with hate speech. It has everything to do with controlling the messaging. And this is what governments do when they don't have control. This is England. This is not North Korea.
Right.
This is what happened in Canada. In Canada, a lot of people listening from Canada, they'll back us up in the chat. Middle class is finished. 8 years it took. Middle class is done. You can't afford a house. By the way, Kamala Harris has said this. She wants to give first-time homeowners $25,000. And what that's going to do, it's going to drive the price of housing up. That's what happened with the college tuitions, because we gave money out like candy and the college tuition just kept going up, and now you can't afford college. Well, guess what?
Right.
Soon we're not going to be able to afford houses, and that means regular people can't afford houses. Connect the dots, but it's messaging. And when the lie loses its power, you have to censor. This is a Western nation. This is a G7 nation acting like North Korea. And I got news for you. When everything is based on a lie, and everything that Kamala Harris has said and Barack Obama and that whole convention is based on nothing more than lies and fabrication, the same thing has to happen here. It's calculus and mathematical, because you can't control people any other way, Joe. You can't control them. So you have to do that. And this is more things. Let's be adults and look at this in a sober manner. This is England. They arrested truckers. They froze their bank accounts, which means
Canada.
they can't eat in Canada.
Canada.
This is, again, it's not North Korea. It's not Russia. It's not China. And people, again, why are we any special? We're not.
We're not.
And this is, again, Joe, it's, to me, again, I say these things, I put it out there, and it comes down to this. You're beholden to someone who has put you in slavery. You are a slave, and they're going to keep you there. You're going to stay there, and you're never going to get out. It's going to take 100 years before things turn around. And that's the direction that this is going, unless people open their eyes. And I'm going to tell you right now, you should be beholden to no one, no ideology, no party, no one except God and your family.
Right.
But that's not what's going on. And that's
that used to be the hierarchy, but that used to be the hierarchy, if you remember. God,
well, that's when things
God,
function.
family, country. God,
that's how
family,
function.
country.
And like I said, I'm beholden to no one. No party, no one. I'm not in the MAGA movement. I'm voting for Donald Trump, but I'm also voting for him in a sober manner. Donald Trump doesn't comport to my Catholic belief system.
Yep.
He's for abortion, and he's indifferent to same-sex marriage. I don't support that. And frankly, that's detrimental to the nation. It's detrimental to women. It's detrimental to the family. He's not the savior of America. Not even close.
No.
So, but this is, it's a lesser of two evils, and the church allows that. So therefore, I'm voting for him.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he's not the answer.
Well, I would say this in terms of a practical thing, and then I want to play for the audience a little bit of what I want to come back to something you said and then play a clip. What you will get, I think, with a Trump presidency that you're certainly not going to get with Kamala or anybody else they decide. And by the way, I'm not convinced that they don't try some kind of shenanigans with her too. But we'll leave that aside for a second. I mean, to try to replace her. Don't know if they could do it legally, but then again, they don't care about the law. Actually, Joe, my apologies. I actually forgot my point. What was your prior point?
No, I was just basically saying, ultimately, it comes down to, where do you build your life? What do you build your life upon? And far too many people, like I said, Joe, they belong to a tribe.
Right.
And that's why they believe this. and because there's no other reason. And here's the thing. I don't even think it matters who it is. And they know it. You see, know what it is? It's like a marketer. A marketer knows the consumer better than the consumer knows themselves. He knows their touch points, and he touches them, and he plays on them, and he sells you on them.
Right.
And that is what they're doing to people. That's what this convention, they throw these themes out. Freedom. You could do what you want. Democracy. These broad stroke things. But what they're doing is they're playing on people. They're being, frankly, hypnotized.
Yeah.
It's like Greek mythology, the siren. What does the siren do? Pretty ladies sing a song. What happens to the sailors? They crash into the rocks because they listen to the siren. It's no different. That's what marketers do, marketers do, and that's exactly what politicians do. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
The question is, does the populace know what they're doing?
When it comes to control, you mentioned control earlier here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please, wherever you're seeing this video, this conversation we're having tonight, Joe and I like to mix it up Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. We have a very loyal following. We want to grow that following, just like anybody else on the internet would. So we're on X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you see this video. Please like, subscribe, share, help us out. We don't ask you for any money, but we'd like for you to do that. Now, you mentioned control. But we did talk about this a little bit, or we alluded to this earlier. Let's bring it back to Canada. Let's talk. Let's listen to Dougie Ford,
the Douglas.
My colleagues and I about the announcement yesterday regarding the safe consumption sites. At this point, it sounds as though you want them to make the transition into the heart hubs, as has been announced as well. Just curious what your thoughts are. How do people who refuse treatment go about making that transition themselves? How do you get them into programs and services that you want them to get into?
Well, you know something, I just don't believe these safe consumption sites. I've listened to the people in the neighborhoods. I've consulted with them. I've been getting endless phone calls about needles being in the parks, needles being by the schools and by the daycare. That's unacceptable. What we believe in these heart hubs is we're putting $378 million into supporting people with primary care, mental health services, addiction care and support, social services, employment support, shelter and transition beds, supportive housing and other supplies and services, including naloxone and on-site showers. So, you know, giving someone, an addict, a place to do their injections, we haven't seen it get better. This was supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to a community to have one of these safe injection sites in their neighborhood. The other problem I have was with the federal government. You know, Safe Supply. They get to go up there and get endless amounts of drugs. And guess what they do? They go out and they sell it and get other people addicted. And then they go and get even stronger drugs. But as far as I'm concerned, the federal government's the biggest drug dealer in the entire country. It's unacceptable. It needs to stop. We need to get rid of Safe Supply. We need to put money into treatment, detox beds. That's what we need to do, not continue to giving people free drugs.
Now, I want to throw this over to you, Joe, here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Now, I'm not as well versed on what's going on in Canada as you are and many that join us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. But what I would say is this: listening to that, you have safe, what was it, safe spaces or whatever it was, and then the difference is the heart hubs. Okay, what's the difference? The difference is clear.
You're enabling people to do.
Well, that's what. But here's my point about the difference between, like you said, about. I'm not an ideological conservative or an ideological Republican. The idea of giving people drugs, okay, number one, the answer is no. As we've been saying on the show from the beginning, the answer is no. You don't give people drugs, okay? People are addicted. You need to treat the addiction. And he pointed out, Doug Ford pointed out, he says they're just getting the drugs. They're selling the drugs because it's an unlimited amount. But then we have this over here where we're actually trying to get people off of drugs, get them back on their feet. It's as part of a social safety net that you and I happen to agree with because we're not knee-jerk ideologues on the right. Okay, so I would pour $378 million into a program like that helps people. And what happens? Trudeau's not going for that. Why? You mentioned it earlier. It's control. The more drugs you have, the more drugs you give to people, the more you control them. Joe,
it's just an easy answer to a difficult problem. It's like throwing money at something sometimes isn't the way to do it. Sometimes it's about going cold turkey. Sometimes it's about, frankly, making a decision and acting like an adult and acting on the decision. Sure, we have to help people. That's a given. But giving them drugs and helping them to facilitate a bad habit is not the answer. That's never the answer to any bad behavior, no matter what it is. That's not an adult approach to anything. That's an easy out. And frankly, it doesn't work. Like Doug Ford said, it never will work. And that's, Joe, listen, life is hard and people have to get that through their head. You got to get up. You got to go to work. You have to have control of yourself. You have to have discipline. You have to have ethic. And those things don't just happen. It's time to grow up. It's time to strengthen families because that's where those type of traits are learned. And what keeps the family together? God. God keeps the family together. The family builds a strong society. And frankly, a strong society makes for a strong nation. And there's the answer. Giving people syringes who frankly are wounded, who are self-medicating. I go into New York City 3 times a week. People are smoking marijuana at 8:30 in the morning. That's not about getting high. That's about self-medicating. That's a person, frankly, that has a problem, most probably depressed, most probably in pain, and they're self-medicating. That's not a party. There's something that you have to get under. There's a problem under that. And if you're not addressing that, you're not addressing the issue that's facing society. And that's what our politicians refuse to do. Because frankly, that's not the way to get votes. That makes people sometimes not like you. But sometimes it's better to not like somebody and hear the truth and fix a problem than continue placating the issue, because when you do that, you don't love the person. It comes right down to that.
Joe, you're not going to get an argument out of me, and that's the truth. And again, we know what these oligarchs are about. We know what Justin Trudeau's about. We know what the DNC is about. We know what the regime in England's about. Okay, we know what the regime in France is all about. We know what they're doing. The bottom line is this. We'll leave the audience with this. We're fighting against, I think you have it right. You have a group of people who don't like the fact, a rather large group of people, by the way, don't like the fact that when you are a middle class, okay, when you're a middle class person, you mentioned Trudeau ruined the middle class in Canada, okay? When you have a middle class, you lose control because the middle class is more independent, okay? They're independent in their thinking. They're independent financially. They don't need you as the government. Just pave the roads and make sure nobody bombs us and then get off our backs, and we're just going to live our lives. That's a threat to the establishment. So obviously, hopefully more people wake up and say, you want to know what? I don't want to listen to these people anymore because they are feeding me a bunch of lies. That requires us and others and many people out there to continue to do what we're doing, all right, and to spread the word out there, to try to raise the consciousness of people so that basically we could start to wrest power away from them. Joe, you got to.
How do you do that? Is this people have to build coalitions? People have to understand that your neighbor isn't your enemy. Your enemy is the government that's taking not only your power away, but your money. They're taking your money. They're taking your status away. And ultimately, that only happens when people build coalitions like what we're about to see tomorrow with Trump and RFK. 2 people that are very different, but they see the issue. They see who the enemy is. And I got news for you. When you get the country back, when you have a Congress and a Senate that's real, that's not controlled by oligarchs, then we'll debate the issue civilly.
Right.
And let the people vote, and where your vote means something.
Right.
But right now it doesn't. And until people see who the true enemy is, come together and fight the enemy together, get the country back, and we have the halls of government working properly, then debate is real, then the laws will represent the people, and then we have America back. But right now we don't.
Joe, that's a great place to leave it because you mentioned enemies. Thanks for joining us here at the front line with JoJo. We're going to leave you with a clip of who the enemy is. They're rather funny, okay, to laugh at, by the way, not to laugh with. And we'll see you next Thursday night, 9 o'clock. Please don't forget, share this video. Help Joe and I out. X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, all across social media. Do whatever you can to help to spread the message. But you got to watch this clip, and we'll talk to you next week.
Of course, in the day that when Donald Trump left office,
Donald Trump would be able to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents.
When I saw him dig deep into his soul and decide to no longer seek re-election and endorse Kamala Harris,
wrote the following, quote, "Women are not without electoral.
Mind your own damn business. Mind your own damn business."
Biden is known in his career as being one of the best eulogy givers at funerals. And now they're making him give his own eulogy at this convention. I mean,
You have to give one its best so you get to give your own.
Yeah, I guess. I am anxious to see how they handle it. It's a sticky wicket. I mean, he was bullied out of this race after 52 years of service to the Democratic Party.
We love Joe. We love Joe. We love Joe. We love Joe.
There wasn't a lot of outreach to the Tim Walz part of the party, Tim Walz voters last night. It was geared towards, specific, very heavy on abortion, right? Lots of women of color and women. So you're right. My demographic.